Hello everyone, this is the Amateur. Welcome to my channel where I just kind of talk life, hobbies, politics, ideologies, what have you. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking affirmative action, which I think is pretty relevant, especially with the current case of Harvard and University of North Carolina that's currently at the Supreme Court. And so I think I'm just gonna this is probably not gonna be too long of a video. I kind of went on my little mini rant last video on race. It was like a rant. People confuse me. Anywho, so affirmative action, and I'm going to explain the definition here. This is just Google. Affirmative action refers to a set of policies and practices within a government or organization seeking to include particular groups based on their gender, race, sexuality, creed, or nationality in areas in which they are underrepresented, such as education and employment. Okay, so where to begin here? So I think I did a report on affirmative action in school. You know what? Let me find it. Never mind, it wasn't that good of a presentation. But it was for affirmative action. But now I'm at a point where we're good. And so I think the history of affirmative action began in about the 1961 President John F. Kennedy, continued by President Lyndon B. Johnson. And it was at a point, I think Brown versus Board of Education had just occurred at the time. And so it was something where we were still very much racially segregated as a country in ideologies and thought processes and just general discontent towards people who happen to be more melanated. And so it was something where the government needed to put in place, you don't get to, or I guess when people were unwillingly, I think it was something where at the time it was like, and I don't know, I'll have to talk about this on another topic as far as with the government's role and public versus private versus the people versus government and all this other stuff. But at least as it pertains to affirmative action, as far as my understanding is people were still discriminating based off skin without outwardly saying that they were doing so. And so to correct that, it was you have to have this number that appropriately represents the number of Africans in the United States, African Americans in the United States, Black people, however you want to call it, in the States, in order for your school to be funded or something along those lines. And so I think affirmative action was necessary, or was needed at first, as far as with, hey, you don't get to just discriminate or use your biases against skin color. But I think now it's not as needed. I think especially, again, coming in a time where people were literally, they were segregating restaurants, they were segregating water fountains, segregating schools, segregating all this other stuff. And so I think at a time where people did not, they legitimately hated Black people, they hated that someone had melanated skin and that they looked different, that they had a different origin, that they had a history where their ancestors were slaves in a country that they shared. From, again, my understanding, there was legitimate animosity towards Black people at the time. And so affirmative action was a necessary tool to kind of combat that. But I think we're at a point now where I don't think that we're any more disadvantaged, and someone might crucify me for this, but it's just I think for the generations, I think what has been at least 2 generations now, and some will argue that it's not enough. Maybe it's not, I don't really know, but I don't think that we're so poor and disadvantaged that we are unable to enter into a school, gain admission into a school on our own merits. And so it's definitely a balance in understanding the two things. Affirmative action is discriminatory. It's discriminatory for minorities, however you want to call that, but specifically against white folks. And I think this case is against Asians. You know, I also found it funny because Caucasian, the origin of that word from the Caucasus Mountains,
from the mountains of Caucasus,
which is in Asia. So, like, Caucasians are Asians, but we don't think they're Asians, they're white. But also, Asians are being discriminated like the whites. I just think it's funny. I think it's weird. But yeah, so affirmative action, I think it's time for it to go. I think it's a means to start working towards a merit-based society. So what you do will matter a whole lot more than what you look like. And I think it's something where, I mean, if you take race out of the admissions process, like even names, because I know that those can be racialized as well. Unfortunately, because we have, people like to be really creative with their names, and sometimes you can tell.
The realest Clark. You got to be kidding me. You named the baby the realest?
Sometimes you can tell. I mean, it is what it is. But even taking that away, because even like my name, it's common, but it's not common. So, like, you can tell. But I would say that I'm an advantage or a surplus, a privilege to anyone who has me on their team. But anywho, so I think with affirmative action and taking that away in school admissions, like no school, like at least in the public schools, and that's again this whole divide between public and private and who gets funding where and what. I think that's all very iffy, and I have some choice thoughts about it that aren't very common, and everyone's probably thinking that I've been drugged or brainwashed or something, but those are just my thoughts, and it makes sense to me. We're not going to that right now. But even then, so if they just took race out of the application process and let someone stand on their merits alone, like even the name, just having the initials, to like literally you couldn't be able to cry discrimination. I guess like I think the thing with discrimination, especially race, is like it tends to be more so on class, as far as with wealth status and lower class, than it is with race alone, which is just something to think about. But my thoughts on affirmative action, I think, is that it's ran its course. It's done what it's need to do as far as with making sure people understood that, Black people, African Americans are just as capable, if they want to be, if they choose to be, as the white counterparts or whatever. So give everybody an equal chance at succeeding if that's at all possible. Yeah. But what do I know? I'm just an amateur. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video.